Good afternoon. This is Pamela Lynn Koldhauser with ANN. We were very fortunate to arrange an interview with former President Abraham Lincoln on the 10-year anniversary of his sudden death. We will be able to ask him some questions that we were never able to ask him when he was alive on some subjects that I feel our viewers will be very interested in. Mrs. Smoth, would you ask President Lincoln to join us?
Can I ask him a personal question first?
Maybe, if it's important.
Well, I want to know if it's true what they say about his wife, Mary Lincoln, that she's a and that she had an affair with the White House gardener, John Watt.
Oh, Mrs. Smoth, that is not a question to ask a president. Besides, this is a news show, not a sideshow.
Well, I just heard from Mrs. Grant, you know, the general's wife, that after the Ford Theater shooting, that she had turned down President Lincoln's invitation because she could not take another insult from Mary Lincoln. So she made up that excuse that she had to visit her children. And of course, Mary Lincoln assumed that she made a pass at President Lincoln, which wasn't true. I know Mrs. Grant, and she would not stoop to Mary Lincoln's level. Mary Lincoln is a
Mrs. Smoth, just go and clean out a vault or something.
They're all clean.
Mrs. Koldhauser.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. President. Well, since this is ANN, we are very interested in your personal views on slavery. My first question is about something that you related only to your law partner, William Herndon, and that is exactly when you first saw slaves and what your impression of them was.
Yes, I do remember this. I think it was May of 1831. It was my friend John Hanks and I, along with Denton Offfoot. We were preparing our raft to go down to New Orleans on the Mississippi River. And I also shared this with Bill Herndon, my law partner. I'll never forget it. We arrived in New Orleans in our homemade raft with our hog barrels and our hogs for sale. And as we walked through the streets, I saw slaves chained together. These were Negroes chained and being maltreated and whipped. I couldn't believe it. We walked through these streets further, and I saw an auction block where a beautiful mulatto lady was being pinched and felt, and she was naked from the waist up, and then paraded around to the bidders so they could see that she was sound and healthy for sale. I remember thinking to myself how outraged and smothered hate and rage I felt for this. I said to myself, boys, let's get out of this. If I ever have a chance to hit this thing called slavery, I will hit it hard.
Of course you did. President, do you have anything that you would like to say to any former slaveholders now?
Yes, I would like to say what I said to the 140th Indiana Regiment, and that was on the 17th of March, 1865. And that is that all men need to be free, and that if anyone wishes to be slavery, it should be wished upon themselves first, and secondly, desired by others.
Right, absolutely. During the Civil War...
I must add something.
Sure.
I also want to make sure that if anyone who argues in the favor of slavery, I have the impulse to make sure that that is applied to them personally.
That sounds like a good plan. So, during the Civil War, what was the news on the border states abolishing slavery, and why did you choose to leave them out of the Emancipation Proclamation?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I did save some clippings, and these were newspaper clippings from various newspapers. I had them with me that evening at Ford Theater, and one in particular was from Missouri, who showed some interest in abolishing slavery. In fact, I believe I have those with me here. Yes. Emancipation in Missouri. Slavery to cease to exist July 4th, 1870. Section 2, that slavery or involuntary servitude, except in punishment of crime, shall cease to exist in Missouri on the 4th of July of 1870. And all slaves within this state on this day will hereby be declared to be free, provided, however, that all persons emancipated by this ordinance shall remain under the control of the subject to their landowners or their legal representatives as servitude during the following period. Further on, down here in Section 5, another section I found interesting. The General Assembly shall have no power to pass laws to emancipate slaves without consent of their owners.
Well, that's just terrible.
Yes.
Well, since there was such poor cooperation with these border states like Missouri, why then did you choose to leave Missouri out of the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, and free their slaves sooner?
Well, I think this Missouri story shows why. If the United States government freed their slaves on 1863, yet Missouri was not freeing their slaves until July 4th of 1870, and even at a time when owners consent in Missouri, then, Missouri could have gotten upset and possibly seceded from the Union. Another example is Kentucky, with their armed neutrality before the Civil War. Who knows what they could have done? They might have even been able to succeed as well. Politicians have to be careful.
Okay, thank you. I understand now. Here's a tough question for you. Do you think that John Wilkes Booth, or any assassin for that matter, could put an end to your influence on Americans simply by putting a bullet in your head?
Absolutely not. I said nearly everything in my second inaugural address on March 4th of 1865 that applies to the coming 20th and 21st centuries. I wouldn't change a word about how I felt towards the lost Southern cause. He cannot kill my words. I say it again as I said it at the end of my address. With malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see right. Let us strive to finish our work as we are in, to bind the nation's wounds, to care for its born in battle, their orphan, their widow, and for us to strive to achieve and cherish a nation of our own and freedom for all nations.
Finally, President Lincoln, do you have anything that you would like to say to our viewers by way of a philosophy to live by, say, through the next century, that would apply to anybody?
Well, yes. I don't have to look far to find something to guide anyone, even into the 25th century. I can remember what I said at my address at Cooper's Union in New York City. I was running for president, and it was February 27th of 1860. I ended up with this statement, and it could be applied to good times or in bad, rain or shine. Let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith, let us to the end dare to do our duty as we understand it.
Those are some great words to live by. I now have an epitaph that I would like to share. It's one of hundreds that we've collected, and I really feel that this will show you how the world feels about you.
Oh my, I hope this is not about the lady on the train.
What is that?
Well, I recall a trip once. I don't recall my destination, but we were sitting in a train car in which the benches faced each other. And in front of me was a young lady who sat sternly and just looked at me the entire time. I tried to ignore her and look out the window occasionally, but I eventually just asked, "Young lady, what is it you're staring at? Is there something bothering you about me?" And she said, "I just cannot get over how ugly you are."
Oh my gosh.
I was taken back and I basically asked, "I have nothing I can do about that. What makes you feel this way?" And she goes, "There is something you could have done about it." You could have stayed home.
That's a terrible thing to say. Gosh. However, that's not what this one is about. This is by the Russian author Leo Tolstoy.
Lincoln was what Beethoven was in music, Dante in poetry, Raphael in painting, and Christ in the philosophy of life. Of all the great national heroes and statesmen of history, Lincoln is the only real giant. Alexander, Frederick the Great, Caesar, Napoleon, Gladstone, and even Washington stand in greatness of character, in depth of feeling, and in certain moral power far behind Lincoln. Lincoln was a man of whom a nation has a right to be proud. He was a Christ in miniature, a saint of humanity whose name will live thousands of years in the legends of future generations. We are still too near his greatness, and so can hardly appreciate his divine power, but after a few centuries more, our posterity will find him considerably bigger than we do. His genius is too strong and too powerful for the common understanding, just as the sun is too hot when its light beams directly on us. Lincoln lived and died a hero, and as a great character he will live as long as the world lives. May his life long bless humanity. Lev Tolstoy.
Well, that was very beautiful, very poetic. You know, I just would like to say, in all of my efforts through those years as president, my main goal was to preserve the Union. And I just simply wish to thank you for giving me a chance to answer those questions.
Absolutely. We are so appreciative of your time. Thank you for being here. This is Pamela Lynn Coldhauser for the Abolition News Network with Mrs. Edith Smoth of the National Martyrs Mausoleum saying good night.